The Chicago skyline glittered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ava Riley's apartment, a dazzling tapestry of light against the deepening twilight. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet excitement of impending celebration. Her wedding dress, a cascade of ivory silk and intricate beadwork, hung expectantly on a bespoke mannequin catching the soft lamplight. Tomorrow she would marry Julian Devereux, the charismatic heir to Chicago's most prestigious real estate development empire, Devereux Properties. Life felt almost impossibly perfect. Julian was everything she'd thought she wanted, devastatingly handsome, ambitious, charming, with a lineage deeply woven into the city's fabric. Theirs was a partnership celebrated in society pages. The brilliant, up-and-coming architect marrying the golden boy of Chicago real estate. Adding to the idyllic picture was Julian's family. His mother, Eleanor Devereux, the elegant matriarch of the clan, had welcomed Ava with warmth, becoming a surrogate figure of maternal support. And Julian's younger sister, Olivia, had quickly become Ava's confidant, the fun-loving, fiercely loyal best friend she'd always craved. A faint tremor of pre-wedding nerves mingled with Ava's genuine happiness. She traced the delicate lace on her gown, envisioning the ceremony at the historic Fourth Presbyterian Church, the reception at the Art Institute, every detail meticulously planned, a testament to her own design sensibilities and the Devereux's impeccable taste. Her phone buzzed, interrupting the reverie. It was Julian's executive assistant, sounding flustered. "Ava, I am so sorry to bother you this late. Mr. Devereux just realized he left the finalized renderings for the 8 a.m. investor presentation, the revised Devereux Tower pitch, in his suite at the Peninsula, where the bachelor party is wrapping up. He absolutely needs them first thing. Is there any chance—" Ava sighed inwardly but kept her tone light. "Of course, Clara, no problem at all. I can swing by and grab them." The Devereux Tower was more than just Julian's flagship project. It was a collaborative masterpiece she had poured her heart and soul into as lead design architect from her own boutique firm, Riley Designs, working closely with Julian's team, including his star in-house architect Isabel Vance. Ensuring tomorrow's critical presentation went smoothly felt like part of her role. "Just text me the suite number." A short while later, Ava found herself stepping out of a cab into the cool autumn air on Michigan Avenue, the imposing facade of the peninsula looming above. The late-night lobby was an oasis of hushed luxury. The concierge, recognizing her immediately from previous visits and events, greeted her warmly and directed her towards the private elevators serving the upper suites. As she stepped onto the plush carpeting of the correct floor and walked down the quiet corridor, she heard it, the unmistakable booming laugh of Julian Devereux, carrying from a suite door left slightly ajar just ahead. It was louder, coarser than usual, fueled by alcohol and the easy camaraderie of his inner circle. Then came the smug voice of Leo Sterling, Julian's lifelong best friend and notorious sycophant. "Seriously, Jules, you're actually going through with it? Settling down? With Ava?" Julian laughed again, the sound sharp, dismissive. "Ava? Relax, Leo. She's essential right now, strategic even. Her firm brings fresh design cred, opens doors with the zoning board. Her connections are useful. Think of it as a merger, consolidating assets. Besides," his voice took on a conspiratorial slur, "Mom adores her. Keeps the family legacy narrative intact." Leo pressed, his tone laced with mock concern. "Yeah, but forever, man? The whole marriage deal?" Another laugh from Julian, and colder this time. "Forever? Don't be an idiot. Ava's the perfect placeholder, talented, devoted, ticks all the boxes for the public image while I solidify the real long-term plays." He paused, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate, charged. "But Isabel... Christ, Isabel Vance actually gets it. She understands the power, the real game. Once this wedding circus is over, locks down Ava's connections and maybe quiets down investors, Isabel and I have our own blueprints." Crude laughter erupted from others in the room. Ava suspects nothing, thinks this is some kind of fairy tale. The sleek portfolio containing the Devereux Tower renderings slipped from Ava's numb fingers, hitting the plush carpet with a soft thud. The world seemed to tilt, sound receding to a dull roar in her ears. Shock, cold and absolute, washed over her, followed by a searing and physical pain in her chest. Placeholder, strategic merger, Isabel Vance. The name echoed in the sudden, terrifying clarity flooding her mind. Isabel, brilliant, ambitious, Julian's right hand at the firm, a woman Ava had professionally respected, even admired. Years of subtle interactions, dismissed doubts, and Julian's casual manipulations, replayed in her mind with horrifying new context. The late nights, working with Isabel on project deadlines, the unexplained business trips, the way Julian sometimes subtly minimized Ava's contributions in front of his father or the board. It hadn't been ambition. It had been calculation. She wasn't his partner. She was a strategic asset, a temporary convenience. A wave of nausea threatened, but something else rose stronger, a chilling, unnatural calm. The tears refused to fall. The architect, the designer who built order from chaos, took over. She bent down automatically, picked up the portfolio, her movements stiff, robotic. She couldn't let them see her. Couldn't let Julian know she knew. Not yet. Retreating silently down the corridor, she rode the elevator back down in a daze, as the luxurious surroundings feeling alien and mocking. She didn't go home. Instead, she directed the cab to the sleek downtown offices of Riley Designs. The city lights blurred past the window, reflections of a life that had just been exposed as a lie. Inside her own quiet office, adrenaline mixed with ice water in her veins, she sat down at her primary workstation, the powerful hub where she brought architectural visions to life. As lead external design architect on Devereux Tower and several other major joint ventures, she possessed high-level, legitimate credentials granting access to Devereux Properties as project management servers, shared document repositories, and intercompany communication logs pertinent to those collaborations. It wasn't hacking, it was authorized access she routinely used for work. But tonight, her search wasn't for structural load calculations or zoning variances. With trembling fingers, but methodical precision, she began typing, cross-referencing project codes with dates Julian had claimed to be working late with Isabel, searching shared calendars, filtering communication logs using keywords. Isabel, private transfer to commission, offshore, personal account. The digital tumblers began to click into place with sickening speed. Emails between Julian and Isabel, disguised under project subject lines, but filled with intimate exchanges, confirming the affair and discussing post-wedding arrangements. Financial records for Devereux Tower showing budget lines Ava had previously questioned, inflated subcontractor invoices, questionable consulting fees. Funds subtly diverted through a series of transactions, ultimately landing in shell corporations linked, through further digging into incorporation records, to Isabel Vance and several offshore entities. The initial proof was there, stark and undeniable on her screen. The affair, the financial malfeasance, his contemptuous view of her. The night was still young. Her wedding day was mere hours away, but the hopeful bride-to-be was gone, consumed by the cold fire of betrayal. In her place sat an architect, now designing not a building, but a demolition. The morning of her wedding dawned bright and clear over Chicago, a cruel mockery of the storm raging within Ava Riley. She had barely slept, the hours before dawn spent meticulously compiling the digital evidence of Julian's treachery. Now, bathed in the soft morning light filtering through her apartment window, an unnerving calm settled over her. The frantic pain of the initial discovery had cooled overnight, hardening into a core of icy resolve. As her bridesmaids arrived, in a flurry of excited energy, champagne flutes and shimmering silk robes, including a beaming Olivia Devereux, Ava moved through the rituals of preparation like an automaton. Hair, makeup, the intricate fastenings of the designer gown. She submitted to the process, her face a mask of serene composure that baffled the women fluttering around her. They mistook her quietness for pre-wedding nerves. Only Ava knew it was the profound stillness before a calculated detonation. She'd reviewed the evidence one last time before they arrived. Encrypted thumb drives containing emails, financial records, and communication logs were securely backed up to multiple anonymous cloud storage locations. A slim manila envelope containing printouts of the most damning, easily digestible proof. The intimate email excerpts between Julian and Isabel discussing their post-wedding plans, clear flowcharts tracing diverted funds from the Devereux Tower project to offshore accounts linked to Isabel, felt heavy and real inside the hidden pocket her seamstress had discreetly added to the voluminous skirt of her wedding gown. Eleanor Devereux arrived mid-morning, her eyes glistening with maternal pride and emotion. "Ava, my dear, you look radiant," she breathed, clasping Ava's hands. "Before things get too hectic, I wanted you to have this." Eleanor opened a velvet box revealing a strand of luminous pearls, clasped with antique diamonds. The Devereux pearls. Julian's great-grandmother wore them on her wedding day, as did his grandmother, and myself. It's tradition. Ava allowed Eleanor to fasten the cool weight around her neck. Another symbol of a legacy built, as she now knew, partly on lies. "They're beautiful, Eleanor, thank you," Ava managed, her voice soft. She met Eleanor's gaze, holding it for a beat longer than necessary. "Thank you for everything. You've been more of a mother to me these past few years than—" She let the sentence hang, hoping the older woman might sense the undercurrent. Eleanor looked momentarily puzzled, a slight frown creasing her brow, but the arrival of the frantic wedding planner with a last-minute seating chart crisis swept the moment away. Later, as the bridesmaids adjusted their own gowns, Olivia helped Ava with her veil, her eyes shining. "Oh, Ava, you are honestly breathtaking. Julian is going to lose his mind when he sees you. He's the luckiest man in Chicago today." "Let's hope he appreciates his luck," Ava replied, meeting Olivia's reflection in the mirror, her smile perfectly mimicking bridal joy. If only Olivia knew the truth about the brother she idolized. Ava excused herself for a final moment alone in the powder room. Her secure phone vibrated. Encrypted text confirmed the final pieces were in place. PI confirms reporter and photographer is seated mid-nave, discreet equipment. Legal contact confirms SEC task force briefed on preliminary findings. Plainclothes team on standby within 5-block radius. Police liaison alerted to potential significant disturbanceable. At venue, uniformed response available if needed. Ava deleted the messages, took a deep and steadying breath, and smoothed down her gown. She looked at her reflection. The woman staring back wore the dress like armor, her carefully applied makeup like war paint. She was ready. The majestic doors of Fourth Presbyterian Church swung open. The soaring notes of Pachelbel's cannon filled the vaulted space. 200 guests rose, turning with expectant smiles. At the end of the long aisle, bathed in the light filtering through stained glass, stood Julian Devereux. Tall, impeccably dressed, radiating the easy charm and confidence of inherited wealth. He beamed at her, the picture of love-struck devotion. Ava began her walk, her steps measured, deliberate. She saw the faces in the pews. Colleagues, family friends, titans of Chicago business and society. She saw Leo Sterling in the front row, giving Julian a knowing smirk. She saw Isabel Vance, seated coolly amongst the Devereux corporate delegation, looking stunning in sapphire blue, a subtle smile playing on her lips. She saw Eleanor dabbing her eyes and Olivia practically vibrating with excitement among the bridesmaids already gathered near the altar. Each face, each smile felt like a betrayal. Memories flickered. Julian's romantic proposal under the Tuscan stars, whispered promises, shared dreams, now revealed as grotesque manipulations. The weight of the hidden envelope against her thigh was a physical reminder of her purpose. This wasn't a wedding march, it was a countdown. She reached the altar. Julian stepped forward, his eyes full of practiced adoration. "Ava," he whispered, reaching for her hand. "You look perfect." She allowed her fingers to brush his, then withdrew them slightly, turning just enough to break the expected connection. The priest, smiling benignly, cleared his throat and opened his book. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." "Excuse me, Father." Ava interrupted, her voice calm but clear, carrying through the suddenly hushed church. She turned fully, not toward Julian, but to face the sea of stunned guests. Julian's smile faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. "Before we proceed with the traditional readings," Ava announced, reaching into the hidden pocket of her gown and withdrawing the manila envelope, "I'd like to share a few passages that feel more relevant to this occasion." The rustle of the paper as she opened the envelope seemed unnaturally loud. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Julian's face began to drain of color as realization dawned. "These," Ava continued, holding up the first printed sheet, "are from Julian Devereux's private emails, specifically his heartfelt exchanges with Mrs. Isabel Vance, lead architect at Devereux Properties, who honors us with her presence today." She didn't need to point. All eyes instinctively darted towards Isabel, whose composure finally cracked, her face freezing in panic. Ava began to read, her voice steady, projecting clearly without needing a microphone in the church's acoustics. "My dearest Isabel," Julian writes here just last month, "just endure this wedding spectacle. And once the merger—" Ava paused, looking directly at Julian, whose face was now ashen. "Excuse me, marriage solidifies Ava's firm's integration and perhaps quiets down those pesky investor inquiries. We proceed exactly as planned. She's necessary collateral, Isabel. Necessary, but temporary. Utterly clueless, bless her heart." A wave of murmurs swept through the church. Julian took an involuntary step towards her, hand outstretched. "Ava, stop this." "Oh, but there's more," Ava said, easily sidestepping him and pulling out another document. "Perhaps emails about my temporary status aren't compelling enough. Maybe the Devereux board members present, or Julian's investors, would be more interested in the rather creative accounting methods used for the Devereux Tower project. The offshore accounts set up under shell corporations. The exceptionally generous consulting fees paid directly to entities controlled by Ms. Vance." She held up a simplified flow chart tracing diverted funds, a document her forensic mind had pieced together overnight. "I have copies," Ava announced brightly, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Enough for everyone, I believe. Including," she raised her voice, her gaze sweeping towards the massive doors at the back of the nave, "the representatives from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I took the liberty of inviting this morning after reviewing Julian's finances. They should be arriving right about—" As if on cue, the heavy oak doors swung open with authority. Two impassive figures in dark, conservative suits stepped inside, their eyes scanning the room. They discreetly flashed badges to the ushers attempting to intercept them and began moving with quiet purpose down the center aisle towards the altar. The moment the word SEC echoed in the hallowed silence of the church, chaos erupted. Gasps turned into audible cries of shock and disbelief. Julian Devereux, his face contorted in a mask of rage and panic, lunged forward, not at Ava, but instinctively towards the damning papers fluttering from her hand. "No! Stop her! Those are—" Ava had anticipated his reaction. She sidestepped his clumsy lunge, deliberately letting the pages scatter across the altar steps and into the front pews like toxic confetti. In the ensuing scramble, the photographer she had hired positioned perfectly, captured it all. Close-ups of the incriminating financial diagrams, Julian's desperate grasping hands, the horrified expressions of the guests closest to the fallout. Amidst the commotion, Isabel Vance, her face pale and set, attempted to melt discreetly into the panicked crowd, angling towards a side exit. Leo Sterling, Julian's best friend, seemed frozen in place near the front pew, caught between ingrained loyalty and dawning self-preservation, his earlier smirk replaced by wide-eyed shock. The two SEC agents, navigating the rising tide of panic with practiced calm, reached the chancel steps. The lead agent Miller addressed Julian directly, his voice firm but level, cutting through the surrounding noise. "Mr. Julian Devereux, Special Agent Miller, SEC Enforcement Division. This is Special Agent Chen. We need you to come with us, sir. We have some questions regarding alleged violations of federal securities law concerning the operations of Devereux Properties." Simultaneously, Agent Chen subtly shifted position, placing himself between Isabel Vance and her intended escape route. He murmured her name, a quiet but unmistakable indication that she, too, was expected to remain. Julian stared at the agents, then whipped his head back towards Ava, his handsome features twisted with venom. "You! You planned this! You vindictive bitch! You've ruined everything!" he snarled, taking an aggressive step towards her. Before he could advance further, Agent Miller placed a restraining hand lightly on his arm. "Mr. Devereux, I advise you to remain calm." At the same time, Ava met Julian's furious gaze, her own expression like Arctic ice. "No, Julian," she stated, her voice devoid of tremor, chillingly precise. "You built this house of cards yourself, brick by brick on lies and misappropriated funds. I simply switched on the lights so everyone could finally see the rot inside." Her movements fluid and deliberate, she reached up, her fingers steady as they unclasped the heavy, antique Devereux pearls from her neck. She turned toward Eleanor Devereux, who stood paralyzed near the front pew, tears streaming silently down her face, her expression a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Olivia sobbed uncontrollably beside her, looking utterly lost and betrayed. "Eleanor?" Ava said softly, holding out the necklace, the pearls gleaming against her palm. "I believe these belong to the Devereux family." Eleanor stared at the heirloom, then at Ava, seemingly unable to process the symbolic gesture amidst the wreckage. Ava gently pressed the pearls into Eleanor's unresisting hand. Turning back to face Julian, now effectively detained between the two impassive agents, Ava delivered her parting words, her voice low but carrying with lethal clarity the noise in the stunned silence near the altar. "Consider this my wedding gift, Julian. The unvarnished, expensive truth about who you really are. It's all you ever deserved." In the pews, pandemonium reigned. Guests were on their feet, whispering frantically, pointing, many holding up phones to record the unprecedented scene. Some elderly relatives looked faint. Prominent business associates exchanged alarmed glances, likely calculating their own potential exposure to Devereux Properties' collapse. Others were already scrambling for the exits, wanting no part of the scandal. Ignoring the chaos swirling around her, Ava turned away from the altar. She didn't glance back at Julian, or Isabel, or Leo, or the Devereux women. Her bouquet lay forgotten on the steps. Holding her head high, her spine straight, she began the long, solitary walk back down the center aisle. The triumphant strains of the wedding march were replaced by a cacophony of shocked murmurs, frantic whispers, and the insistent, rapid clicking of the photographer's camera capturing a resolute departure. She felt hundreds of eyes burning into her back, but her gaze remained fixed on the massive church doors ahead. The suffocating weight of Julian's deceit, of the life she almost stepped into, lifted with each measured step. This walk wasn't one of shame. It was one of liberation. She pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the bright, crisp Chicago daylight. As anticipated, a small contingent of reporters and photographers was already gathering on the steps, alerted initially by her discreet PI and now undoubtedly drawn by the undeniable signs of catastrophe erupting from within. The arrival of federal agents at a Devereux wedding. Her designated contact, a sharp investigative reporter Ava respected, stepped forward with a microphone. Ava paused briefly, taking a controlling breath, facing the nascent media storm with the same composure she'd shown inside. "Today was supposed to be my wedding day," she began, her voice clear, steady, and devoid of self-pity, easily carrying over the first shouted questions. Instead, circumstances necessitated that it become an act of public accountability. She kept her statement factual, professional, framing her actions carefully. Evidence demonstrating significant financial fraud, ethical violations, and potential securities law infractions within Devereux Properties, directly involving Julian Devereux and potentially other associates, has been compiled and formally submitted to the relevant authorities this morning, including the SEC agents who are currently inside. She gestured briefly back towards the church. "My only hope," she concluded, her gaze sweeping across the reporters, "is that bringing this truth to light will prevent further financial harm to Devereux Properties investors, its employees, and the city entities it contracts with. I intend to cooperate fully with the ongoing investigations. I will have no further comment at this time." Before the ensuing barrage of questions could fully erupt, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows pulled smoothly to the curb, arranged earlier by her PI. The driver opened the rear door. Ava slipped inside quickly, the door closing with a solid thunk, sealing her off from the burgeoning scandal. As the car pulled away, leaving the chaos of the ruined wedding and the gathering media frenzy behind her, Ava allowed herself a single, deep, shuddering breath. It was done. The weeks following the explosive wedding day dissolved into a blur of legal consultations, media static, and the disorienting process of untangling her life from the Devereux name. Ava moved out of the penthouse she had once shared with Julian, establishing both her home and the newly independent Riley Designs in a bright, airy loft space in Chicago's rapidly evolving Fulton Market District. Surrounded by exposed brick, architectural models, and the determined energy of her small team, she began the arduous task of rebuilding. The Devereux scandal dominated Chicago headlines and business journals for weeks. As predicted, Julian and Isabel Vance were swiftly indicted by a federal grand jury. The charges were extensive: multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement related to Devereux Properties operations, particularly the flagship Devereux Tower project. Their assets were frozen, their reputations irrevocably shattered. The wheels of justice, set in motion by Ava's calculated reveal, were now grinding forward inexorably. Amidst the legal storm, Ava navigated the delicate, fractured relationships with the Devereux women. Olivia, her bridesmaid and friend, was the first to reach out, visiting Ava at the new office, her expression hesitant, torn. Their initial conversations were strained, punctuated by Olivia's residual disbelief and instinctive desire to defend her brother. "Ava, I can't reconcile the man I know with what you're saying, what the news is reporting," Olivia had pleaded during one difficult meeting, tears welling in her eyes. Ava remained firm, but gentle with Olivia's pain. She didn't flood her with all the sordid details, but shared one irrefutable piece of evidence: a clear financial flow chart she herself had created, demonstrating how funds allocated for Devereux Tower subcontractors had been systematically diverted through shell corporations controlled by Isabel. It was cold, factual, and undeniable. "This isn't about emotion, Liv," Ava had said quietly. This is about documented fact. This is who he chose to be. Seeing the proof, combined with the mounting public evidence from the indictment, slowly eroded Olivia's defenses. The painful realization dawned that the brother she idolized was, in fact, capable of profound deceit. Their friendship didn't snap back instantly, but began a slow, tentative process of repair, rebuilt now on the difficult bedrock of shared truth rather than shared affection for Julian. "I feel like I never really knew him," Olivia admitted tearfully one afternoon, marking a turning point. Eleanor Devereux requested a meeting a few weeks later. Ava agreed, choosing a neutral, quiet hotel lounge. The imperious matriarch Ava remembered was gone, replaced by a woman carrying the heavy weight of public shame and private disillusionment. Eleanor revealed she had commissioned her own discreet investigation immediately after the wedding fiasco. The findings corroborated everything Ava had uncovered and, disturbingly, suggested Julian's financial manipulations might have roots stretching back even further, possibly involving transactions during his late father's tenure. "I owe you an apology, Ava," Eleanor stated, her voice low but steady, meeting Ava's gaze directly. "I was blinded by family loyalty, by the desire to protect the Devereux name. I doubted you, even privately blamed you for the scandal." She sighed heavily. "My investigators confirmed your findings, and more. Julian, he broke my trust, his father's legacy, everything." She paused, then addressed the heirloom pearls Ava had returned to her amidst the chaos at the church. "I initially refused to accept them back from you. Now, I understand they cannot represent our family's past honor. Perhaps," she gave a sad smile, "they represent the painful cost of truth. Keep them, my dear, or donate them. They are no longer a symbol I recognize." They sat in somber silence for a moment, a new, fragile understanding forming between them, forged in shared disappointment. "You were incredibly brave," Eleanor finally whispered. "Painful as it is. You did the right thing." The professional repercussions for others in Julian's orbit were swift. Leo Sterling, Julian's smirking best man, found himself socially ostracized and professionally radioactive. His proximity to Julian and rumored involvement in some of the questionable deals led to his quiet dismissal from his finance job. He became a footnote, a cautionary tale about misplaced loyalty. Conversely, Riley Design's experienced an unexpected surge in interest. While some connections tied to the Devereux sphere evaporated, new opportunities arose. Potential clients, impressed by Ava's demonstrated integrity and courage, and perhaps eager to distance themselves from the Devereux taint, sought out her firm. Architects, developers, and even city planning committees valuing transparency and ethical practices began reaching out. Ava found herself in a position to be selective, choosing projects that aligned with her own values. She took on the pro bono redesign of a community arts center in Pilsen, whose original funding had been jeopardized by a defaulted Devereux-linked loan, pouring her creative energy into rebuilding something positive from the wreckage. Her work began gaining recognition not just for its aesthetic brilliance, but for the ethical principles guiding it. She wasn't merely surviving the scandal, she was leveraging the harsh clarity it provided to redefine her career on her own uncompromising terms. Working late one evening, sketching designs for the community center, Ava felt a sense of purpose she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The trauma of the betrayal remained, a scar tissue beneath the surface, but it no longer defined her present. She was healing, finding strength not in revenge, but in creation, in building something honest and meaningful. The path forward, once obscured by Julian's glittering promises, was now hers alone to design, and for the first time in a long time, it felt full of authentic possibility. The wheels of federal justice turned, slower than Ava's initial takedown, but just as inexorably. Months after the aborted wedding, the trial of Julian Devereux and Isabel Vance commenced in a downtown Chicago courtroom. The case garnered significant media attention, framed as a cautionary tale of corporate greed and personal betrayal among the city's elite. Ava took the stand, composed and articulate. Under the guidance of the assistant U.S. attorney, she presented her findings, not as a scorned lover, but as a meticulous professional detailing architectural plans interwoven with financial discrepancies. She explained how project funds were systematically diverted, using falsified invoices and shell corporations, backing her testimony with the emails and financial traces she had uncovered that fateful night. Arthur Vance's aggressive cross-examination attempted to paint her as vindictive and emotionally compromised, but Ava remained steadfast, sticking to the documented facts, her calm demeanor undercutting his narrative. Perhaps the most impactful testimony came from Eleanor Devereux. Taking the stand against her own son was visibly agonizing, yet she did so with quiet dignity. She corroborated key timelines, confirmed Julian's pattern of dismissiveness regarding financial oversight, and even produced records showing the large, unexplained loans from family trust to Julian that coincided with Devereux Properties' cash flow crises. Loans he had claimed were for legitimate business expansion, but which investigators now linked to offshore accounts. Her testimony, delivered with heartbreaking honesty, painted a picture of a son who had manipulated not just his fiancé, but his own family. Isabel Vance, having secured a plea deal in exchange for her full cooperation, provided the final nails in Julian's coffin. Looking diminished and stripped of her former confidence, she detailed the extent of the conspiracy, the planning meetings, the methods used to hide the diverted funds, the offshore structures, confirming Julian was the primary architect of the fraud. The trial concluded after several weeks. The jury returned swift, unanimous guilty verdicts on multiple counts for Julian. Isabel pleaded guilty to lesser charges as per her agreement. At the sentencing hearing, the judge delivered a scathing indictment of Julian's calculated abuse of trust and privilege, sentencing him to 12 years in federal prison. Isabel received a sentence of 4 years, acknowledging her cooperation but condemning her active participation. Julian's handsome face finally lost its mask of composure, showing a flicker of disbelief before hardening into resentment. Isabel wept quietly. Ava watched from the gallery, flanked by Olivia and Eleanor, feeling not triumph, but a profound, somber sense of closure. Justice, cold and impartial, had run its course. With the trial concluded, Ava fully immersed herself in rebuilding. Riley Designs flourished, its reputation enhanced by Ava's unwavering ethical stance during the scandal. She became an unintentional symbol of integrity in the often murky world of high-end development and architecture. While she largely avoided the media spotlight, she selectively accepted invitations to speak at industry events, not about the salacious details, but about the importance of transparency, ethical design processes, and corporate accountability. Her personal healing continued, quieter now, away from the public eye. The bond with Olivia strengthened, transforming from bridesmaids' camaraderie into a deeper friendship built on shared disillusionment and mutual respect. Eleanor remained a supportive, albeit distant, figure, focused on managing the complex legal and financial wreckage of the Devereux legacy. It was during a prestigious symposium on ethical urban redevelopment, held at the University of Chicago, that Ava's next chapter quietly began. She was a featured panelist discussing the architect's role in fostering community trust, inevitably drawing on lessons learned, though carefully anonymized, from the Devereux collapse. Sharing the stage was Dr. Ben Carter, a respected sociologist from the university, known for his insightful work on urban history, social equity, and the impact of development on communities. During the Q&A, Ben posed a question to Ava, not about the scandal, but about the inherent tension between architectural aesthetics and equitable community access in large-scale projects. It was thoughtful, nuanced, demonstrating he had engaged with the substance of her talk, not just her notoriety. Ava's answer sparked a brief, engaging intellectual exchange right there on the stage. After the panel, Ben approached her, extending a hand. "Ms. Riley, Ava, your insights were incredibly valuable. That point about integrating community feedback loops early in the designs phase, not just as performative gestures, that's crucial." He had warm, intelligent eyes and an easy, unassuming presence that contrasted sharply with the calculated charm she associated with Julian's world. Their conversation continued easily, discovering shared frustrations with profit-driven development that ignored human cost, and a mutual passion for Chicago's rich architectural history. He wasn't starstruck by her connection to the Devereux scandal. He seemed genuinely interested in her ideas, her professional experiences. He invited her for coffee the following week to continue the discussion. Coffee led to lunches, discussing everything from the historic preservation battles to contemporary social issues. They visited architectural landmarks together, attended community board meetings, and even collaborated informally on research for an article Ben was writing on corporate responsibility in urban planning, using the Devereux fallout, heavily anonymized, as a cautionary case study. Ava found herself relaxing in his company in a way she hadn't thought possible. Ben listened more than he talked, asked insightful questions, and valued her intellect and her principles. There were no games, no hidden agendas, just a growing intellectual chemistry and mutual respect. He knew the broad strokes of her past, but treated her not as a victim or a vengeful heroine, but as a resilient, accomplished professional. The healing wasn't instantaneous, but spending time with Ben felt like stepping into clean air after years in a toxic environment. He represented a different kind of strength, one built on integrity, knowledge, and quiet conviction, rather than inherited wealth and manipulative charm. A cautious optimism began to bloom alongside the intellectual connection, hinting at the possibility of a future built not on calculated risk, but on genuine shared ground. 3 years passed, seasons turning over the Chicago landscape, each bringing Ava Riley further away from the wreckage of her almost marriage, and deeper into a life built on her own terms. Riley designs have become synonymous with innovative, ethical architecture, her reputation solidifying as a leader who valued community impact as much as aesthetic vision. Her relationship with Dr. Ben Carter had deepened into a steady, loving partnership, grounded in mutual respect and shared intellectual curiosity. They now shared a sunlit apartment overlooking Millennium Park, a space filled with books, architectural sketches, and the comfortable rhythm of a life built together. Olivia Devereux, having navigated the difficult path of acknowledging her brother's crimes while forging her own identity, had successfully launched a small, independent real estate investment fund with Eleanor's quiet backing. Focusing on sustainable, community-centric projects in underserved Chicago neighborhoods, Olivia was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding the Devereux name, associating it now with responsibility rather than rapaciousness. The bond between Ava, Olivia, and Eleanor remained strong, a testament to the unexpected family forged in the crucible of Julian's betrayal. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when the unexpected request arrived, an email forwarded via Arthur Thorne's office, originating from the chaplaincy service at the Federal Correctional Facility where Julian was incarcerated. Julian Devereux, approaching eligibility for his first parole hearing, was requesting a meeting with Ava. The stated purpose, according to the chaplain, was related to his rehabilitation process and a desire to express remorse directly as part of making amends. Ava felt a jolt, not of fear or anger, but of surprise. She discussed it with Ben, whose quiet support was unwavering. "It's entirely your decision, Ava. Whatever feels right for your own peace of mind." She spoke with Olivia and Eleanor, who both expressed cautious support, but urged her to protect herself emotionally. After careful consideration, Ava agreed. There was a sense not of obligation, but of needing to close this final lingering loop, to witness for herself whatever transformation, if any, had occurred. The prison visiting room was as stark and sterile as she'd imagined, a world away from the opulent hotel suites and boardrooms Julian had once commanded. He entered escorted by a guard, wearing the standard-issue uniform. The years inside had weathered him. The easy, entitled charm was gone, replaced by a quiet sobriety. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes, when they met hers across the metal table, held a flicker of something new, not calculation, but perhaps a hard-won self-awareness. "Ava," he said, his voice rougher, lacking its former smooth cadence. He didn't use her married name, acknowledging its nullity. "Thank you for coming. I know this couldn't have been easy." "Why did you want to see me, Julian?" Ava asked calmly, her hands resting composedly in her lap. He looked down at his own hands, then met her gaze again. "I've had a lot of time to think about everything, the choices I made, the person I was." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "There are no excuses for what I did to you, to Isabel, to my family, to the investors and employees. It was driven by arrogance, greed, and a profound insecurity I masked with power." He spoke about the counseling programs in prison, the group sessions with other white-collar offenders, the dawning, horrifying realization of the real human cost behind the abstract numbers and deceptive deals. "I spent my life constructing a facade, Ava, building an empire on shaky foundations because I thought that's what defined success, what defined a Devereux. You were supposed to be the final, perfect piece of that facade." His voice cracked slightly. "The irony is, you were the only truly solid thing in my life, and I was too blind and too broken to see it." He didn't explicitly ask for forgiveness, seeming to understand it wasn't his to request nor hers to easily grant. Instead, he spoke of accountability. "Hearing you read those emails at the altar, seeing the SEC agents, it was like the whole rotten structure collapsed inwards. It took years in here, stripped of everything, to even begin to understand the man who built it." He mentioned surprisingly that he'd started co-facilitating a financial ethics discussion group for inmates, using anonymized case studies, including elements clearly drawn from his own downfall. to illustrate the slippery slope of rationalization. Ava listened silently, observing him with the detached analytical skill she applied to understanding complex systems. The change appeared genuine, not a performance for parole, but the hard-earned result of consequence and introspection. The anger she had once felt towards him had long since dissipated, replaced by a kind of weary understanding of his profound flaws. "I hear you, Julian," she said finally, her voice even. "Acknowledgement is a start. What you do with that understanding going forward will be the real measure." As the guards signaled time was up, Julian stood. "I know this means little now," he said quietly, "but the work you, Olivia, and my mother are doing, rebuilding something positive, that's the only legacy worth having. You were right to stop me." Walking out of the prison gates and into the bright afternoon sun, Ava felt a profound sense of release, not because Julian had apologized or changed, but because she had. Seeing him, hearing him, hadn't reopened old wounds. It had simply confirmed how far she had traveled from the woman who had nearly married him. His fate was his own to navigate now. It no longer cast a shadow on hers. Later that evening, curled up with Ben on their sofa, watching the city lights twinkle, Ava felt a deep, abiding peace. Her life wasn't the fairy tale she had once envisioned, but something far richer, more complex, and infinitely more authentic. Her work brought purpose, her relationships brought joy, and her past, once a source of pain, had become a wellspring of strength and wisdom. The revenges she had exacted at the altar had been a necessary catalyst, a controlled demolition done to clear the ground. But the true victory wasn't in the destruction. It was in the patient, intentional act of building something better, something true in its place. The future stretched before her, clear and bright, a landscape designed by her own hand.